And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. We're looking at 24-hour SDO imagery here. We've got 171 plus 193 angstroms, and you indeed are seeing a filament eruption. It's actually just exiting the corona as we stream the video. And thanks for stargazing with us here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. So we're going to swap out 171 angstroms here for 304 angstroms. There's ionized helium plus ionized iron. And let's go around the horn as there are some filamentary features and a new sunspot rising in the southeast. So here's this crown prominence that's been up here for days, hanging out by the north heliographic polar area. And let's show you some more close-ups here. Here is your northwestern limb. Prominence setting over there as well. How about your southwestern limb? There's a great view of that filamentary eruption. Also, you can see a little bit of X-ray production as part of that filament splashes back down right in this area, just to the east of the Earth scale image. Don't worry, we've also got the southeastern limb, a great view of this coronal hole. And of course, that rising sunspot. Which for some reason, weird misanthropic grand solar minimum enthusiasts are probably mad about. Yeah, they're probably mad about sunspots. It's quite weird, really. They want to be right. They don't care about the implications. As they chant grand solar minimum, grand solar minimum, grand solar minimum, like legit cultists. Here's the northeastern limb. And let's take a look at sunspots here. Wow, huge filament up there. Check out the size of this one. That filament is bulky. Look how long it is. It's probably 20 Earth diameters at least in length. It's stretching all the way around, out of sight there, around the northeastern limb. Huge plasma filament there, hanging out in the northeast. So here's a brief look at sunspots. And the number is going to continue to drop today unless we have more sunspots form or rise. So a whole series of sunspot groups are setting down here in the southeastern limb. We do have one sunspot that rose. It's only an alpha class sunspot. The likelihood of it producing large flares isn't particularly high, at least from what I see so far. There's your colorized magnetogram. That is yesterday plus today, and so is this imagery. That's SDO intensity gram. So let's take a brief look here at Croissant Earth to see what's been erupting as far as volcanoes. Mauna Loa there showing up on the list. We'll get to it here in a minute. Subinosejima producing an unknown size volcanic ash plume. Semeru producing a 14,000-foot ash plume as it explodes on the Isle of East Java, Indonesia. Mauna Loa there back on the list because the volcanic alert level has been lowered to green. So even though there is still some inflation continuing as upper magma chambers refill, Mauna Loa now green alert level. Tanaga in the Aleutian Islands, looks like it has waned. The Tanaga volcano there now decreased also to yellow from orange. Takawanga also decreased from orange to yellow. So there you go, some downticks there in volcanic activity, at least in alert levels. Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 210. It's a 21,000-foot ash plume over central Mexico as Popocatépetl explodes. Fuego has dispersed its ash over Guatemala, fertilizing the Central American nation. Sangay exploding, flight level 190. No volcanic ash observed from Revenador. Doesn't mean it's not erupting. Sabancaya is erupting. It's producing a 24,000-foot plume of volcanic ash as it explodes. Flight level 240. Please do not pole vault the caldera. Here are the past 90 days of seismic activity, and we do have one weird earthquake to cover. We'll cover those over a 5 magnitude. And the first one we're going to mention here is this one right here in near Peace River, Canada, a 5.0 there. Very far into the North American continent there. Nowhere near the plate boundary. Maybe 1,000 miles from the plate boundary. So that one came in at 14:59 Universal Time yesterday afternoon. Also, Micronesia had a 5.0. That one is east of the Philippines. Iraq had a 5.1. There's the location of that quake, north of Saudi Arabia. And the most recent quake over a 5 magnitude was this 5.1 near Kamdo, China. That was at 10:39 Universal Time this morning. And let's get back to space. Here's a 24-hour video from SDO, the house favorite wavelength, 171 angstroms. And thanks for leaving comments, Mike Bordages. 10.7 centimeter radial flux is at 135 solar flux units. That is the most proportional data that we have to sunspot number. When you have a high sunspot number, you have a high radio flux. When you have a low sunspot number, you have a low radio flux. There's a perfect example of it. That's a one-year graph. The red line is the sunspot number. The black line is the radio flux. And here's a space weather enthusiast dashboard not forecasting any space weather storms. It's fairly clear sailing in between the sun and Earth at the moment. No space weather storms or geomagnetic unrest forecasted by NOAA or by our channel. Here's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. You're looking at magnetohydrodynamic pressure here, modeled by the Space Weather Modeling Framework. If you want to read more about it, head down to the bottom here and click the Details tab. That will link you to the Space Weather Modeling Framework. You, the viewer, can download the software and view it yourself. This model courtesy of Michigan Geospace Model V1.2. Fairly smooth environment here out to about 12 Earth diameters. That's Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. So happy St. Patrick's Day to all of our viewers out there of various different persuasions. This is the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. The scale here is the units here are nanotesla. And it is the last 4 hours. Again, geomagnetically calm conditions on planet Earth at the moment. The planetary K index is only at 2. KP2 is the current geomagnetically calm condition. And let's take a look at the view from Lagrange point 1, at least the data view. Lagrange point 1, the location of the solar wind measurements by ACE and Discover. So current conditions are here pretty unremarkable. 6.3 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density, solar wind speed 436 kilometers per second as a high-speed coronal hole wind stream subsides. Next, looking at our GOES magnetometers. And if you're wondering what those arc jet start and end moments are, those are the satellites turning on their thrusters to maneuver and maintain their geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. We've seen a tight range here for the GOES magnetometers for the past 24 hours. Pretty low highs and pretty high lows. The N's and M's. Up top, those stand for midnight and noon local time for the satellite. Next, we'll look at the heliospheric current sheet. And Earth is moving toward, well, the current sheet is moving toward Earth, a south pole-oriented one. So you can see that showing up here in red. South solar polar field here looking a little stronger than the north as it's taking up, it's polarizing more of the equatorial plasma than the North Pole. So if you look right here, this is the South Pole current sheet shown in red, North Pole current sheet shown here in green. There is a sector boundary crossing showing up here pretty soon. Keep in mind that could change suddenly with basically no warning. We'll also show our line of sight field plot. The sun's B field is depicted here in blue, north solar polar field in green, south in red. And that brings us to the very important, if not crucial, coronal holes. So you can see some migration of this south pole-oriented coronal hole here, leaving the south heliographic polar region. Don't get geographic and magnetic poles confused, folks. They are different phenomenon, and it should, maybe we have to remind some of our viewers that magnetism does not control planetary motions or cosmological motions of things like galaxies, at least not as far as we can tell. So don't get confused about magnetic fields and things like orbits, because they are, Earth's orbit does not mysteriously change because of Earth's magnetic field changing. Anyway, that's our line of sight coronal hole plot. We got a bunch of North Pole oriented coronal holes and some South Pole ones rotating it as well. So let's take a look at that in 211 angstroms. So here we've got these South Pole coronal holes over here ahead of this new sunspot. And that is next on the agenda, is indeed sunspots. However, before we get to that, take a moment to visit the links below the video. If you haven't checked out our merch, the official merch of the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name and News, can be linked right below this video in the description. If you're only watching on BitChute, make sure you view on YouTube, as you're missing most of the content. Today's featured product is Maxa. Yeah, Maxa, which means make astronomy and cosmology science again. And one of the very important things we're doing on the channel is we're making connections between some of the important people who will be responsible for rewriting large portions of cosmology and astronomy. People like Brian Keating, Pierre-Marie Robitaille, Tamitha Skov, Erica Palmerio, perhaps Anton Petrov, and others. If I missed anybody, I apologize. I don't want to try to do a complete list, but there are certain people. Also, Scott McIntosh should definitely appear on the list, maybe even Steve Lehman. They're all helping to Maxa, make astronomy and cosmology science again. Let's advance these fields, shall we? So help advance our content by picking up some merch. We do roll most of our revenue back into the channel. So thanks to everybody who supported the channel. Again, if you visit the link below the video to the Redbubble shop, you'll find the products in order of best selling. We want it to be cheap and fast. We want it to be cheap and we want it to be fast and good, but not cheap. So next we're looking at sunspots here, and I must have forgotten to expand this. So there's the current situation. The new sunspot that rose in the southeast, that will be known as 3256. Most assuredly, 3256. It just rose in the southeast. Again, making those poor grand solar minimum cultists a little bit upset, I suspect. They were hoping for years and years without sunspots because, well, frankly, they are nuts. They are propped up on one paper, and the grand solar minimum cult, the cult leader is Valentina Zarkova, sadly. Anyway, that's 131 angstroms plus the SDO continuum. We've also got 211 angstroms in there for some reason. There is just a closer view of the same 24-hour video. And here is the SDO continuum by itself. And if sunspots make you mad, please let us know in the comments. I think it's kind of funny. However, it's also kind of weird, and perhaps some sort of misanthropy has been exposed here. It's misanthropy, folks. People are hoping for a disaster. People want to see civilization end because they're completely fed up, I suspect. And, you might not blame them, but don't sink into a misanthropic funk. It's very, it's inhuman. Anyway, looking at the ghost proton flux here, these relativistic particles are still chilling. There are still a few out there, a little bit higher than normal, but it's nothing to really cause any radio blackouts or anything like that. No radio brownouts likely even caused by that low level of proton flux. And as far as flaring goes, we've only seen C-class intensifications, although this one is interesting, a legit double peak. So that one happened between 6:20 and I'll say 7:10. So I'll say between 6 and 7:15 this morning, there was a double peak C-class intensification. Let's see if we can figure out where that came from on our shamrock green 94 angstroms wavelength. I suspect it came from this sunspot down here. And let's see if we can figure that out. Should be right at the end. And indeed, it came from this new rising sunspot group. So far it's only alpha class, but it has already produced the largest flare of the past couple of days. All right, so that's coronal holes and flaring and fields and real-time solar wind and filaments and so on. Let's take a look at what's going on overhead. As we're always interested in that, we encourage you to look up, if you want to create a star chart for yourself, this is skyandtelescope.org. Just put in your location. You can create your own star chart. We've got the sun only a few degrees off the horizon here and quite close in alignment to Mercury, which we'll show you here on the coronagraph imagery in a minute. First, a solar system forecast. This is where things are today. Here's where things will be in a week. Earth is on a very lonely portion of the solar system. No other planets over here, although Mercury and Venus are catching up. Continuing on to our coronagraphs, here are yesterday's coronagraphs from George Mason University. You can see Mercury in the imagery there. And coronal mass ejections have been pretty calm. Not a lot of CMEs happening in the past 24 hours, although there is one happening right now. Let's see if it shows up in this imagery. I suspect it might not. You'll probably see it coming out of the southern portion of the coronagraph a little bit later today. We'll show you the GO 16 SUVI in a minute. First, the Soho Lasco C3 and Stereo A, located only a few degrees behind the Earth, orbitally speaking now. You can see how close Stereo A must be to Earth because Mercury is that close to the coronagraph. I'm not sure exactly the number of degrees. I don't really care the number of degrees. Again, coronal mass ejections have been quite calm here. If there have been any, they've been minor and not likely earthly directed, at least based on the available data that we have. Let's look at our standard 24-hour videos just to sort of get all the info we can about it. Looks like a little bit of missing data there, but I don't see any indication that any of those CMEs that are happening are earthly directed. So we do see one off the northeastern limb, one off the southwestern limb, and one out of the western limb. They don't appear to be earthly directed. Here's another. These are all the same videos, essentially just at different zoom levels. And you can see that CME happening down here. That's not likely to be earthly directed either, but it is certainly a huge filament. And let's move on to look at filaments. So there you go. Somebody should have named this one on Twitter, but it might be too late now, as it looks like it's mostly gone. If you do want to name filaments, make sure you join us over on Twitter. Follow the hashtag SpaceWeather, SpaceWX, and of course, hashtag NameThatFilament. Thanks to everybody who's followed us over on Twitter. If you don't have an account, create an account over on Twitter. Now we're back down to 388 followers as the shadow bans pathetically and putridly continue on all of the major social media platforms. What a giant, pathetic, and disgusting scam big tech corporations are. And I mean Alphabet, Apple, Meta, and Twitter. 4 of the evilest and most disgusting companies in the history of mankind. If you think the internet's an important invention, those 4 companies are some of the evilest corporations that have ever existed. Here's the past 24 hours and 304 angstroms, and you'll see that filamentary eruption indeed happening right down here. And whoops, there it goes. And here it is happening in the past couple of hours. So this is the GO 16 SUVI, and there's a great prominence happening down there as that filament is on its way out. It could be earthly directed, but I would suspect that it's probably going to be off to the southwest. Let us know what you think in the comments. Perhaps make your coronal mass ejection trajectory forecast right in our comments. If you've got comments directly for the sun, leave those in the comments as well. Many of our viewers are convinced that the sun watches our videos. Next, continuing on to our space weather, this is our satellite's community dashboard. We have some minor surface charging happening here in the Central Pacific, just moving off of Baja, Mexico, and so forth. Those are pretty minor, nothing to really write home about. GO's electron flux here remains quite low. So we are seeing a coronal hole high-speed stream subsiding. We can expect an uptick in this, I would say, and NOAA agrees. There's the forecast model for relativistic electrons. Those are measured at the F layer. Here's the 1-year chart of the relativistic electrons. And here is a diagram of things like thermospheric temperatures, penetration of electromagnetic radiation to atmospheric layers, like the troposphere where all of your weather occurs, and chemical densities in the thermosphere. The F layer is located at about 300 kilometers of altitude, and here's the vibrational frequency. We are seeing major anomalies once again in the ionosphere because we're seeing some high-frequency anomalies covering most of the planet, or large portions of the planet at least. So that's the previous day. We'll let that play through and we'll show the anomaly gram. It shows higher resolution. So there's the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. And you can see a lot of blue around the southern portion of the planet. So those are global scale high-frequency anomalies. Also some low-frequency anomalies happening around the North Polar region. And we show the daily data on the channel because it could be used for future reference. Anyway, here's the latest image. That's 1145 universal time ionogram and 1145 universal time anomalygram. We'll also show the total electron content forecast. It shows the free electrons from your GPS satellite down to your handset. Hence, it shows you the most likely places to see GPS errors. The total electron content features electrons from the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt, the outer plasmasphere, the inner Van Allen belt, the inner plasmasphere, and the ionosphere. Those free electrons can refract your GPS signal. That's why we show it on the channel, because we are zooming in from space weather to Earth weather. Actually, the total electron content here is quite orderly. It is mostly organized around the equator at noontime, so no anomalies there in the electron content. And let's take a look at the latest imagery. There's your latest SDO intensitygram, and here's your latest SDO magnetogram. And of course, we'll look at this new sunspot. There you go. It is only alpha class at the moment. I only see one umbra, although it is large. Larger indeed than planet Earth. Here's your full disk rockback. And we're going to move to meteorology next. That is our bonus features segment. And just a quick reminder, please visit our links. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists once again. Our official website is smashomash.com, so make sure you visit our links over there, hit us up on social media, etc. If you've unplugged from social media forever, we are not surprised, and we're not cross with you, as it is truly pathetic on the internet these days. You would think that the propaganda would have ended, although we have just crossed the 3-year anniversary of the pinnacle of Earth's propaganda. It was March 15th of 2020 when it looked like an engineered market crash. Yeah, an engineered market crash. If you want to support the channel, consider becoming a member of the Smash Team at smashomash.com/Smash Team. There's a gold membership. There's a gold annual paid-up subscription. There's a silver. There's a bronze level. We do send out email alerts when natural disasters happen. We're often faster. We're usually faster than USGS. So if you want things like tsunami alerts, space weather alerts, and of course notifications by email when we put out a video, do it. Log in, create a login, and so on. Click the posts page to see the latest posts for your level at smashomash.com/Smash Team. Quick reminder, we will be streaming live on YouTube for the equinox. That'll be at 5:24 and 20 seconds Eastern Daylight Time on Monday, March 20th. We'll start our live stream around 5 p.m. on that day, so make sure you join us for our equinox stream. Yes, our equinox stream. Oh, there we go. All right. I was just showing you space. So there is our equinox stream. And by the way, if you're wondering what that is, that's not just random stuff. That bright star right there, that's Alpha Cygni, known as Deneb, the brightest intrinsic object visible from our solar system. Anyway, let's get to weather as we are doing some wave chasing. So I think the situation has changed. It looks like the world's largest waves are now over here in the Southern Ocean at about 31 feet. What you're looking at here is the animation is surface winds, and the coloration is wave height. So some big waves there. What are those, the Falklands? I'm not sure what islands those are. Whatever islands those are right there, there's probably some good surf there, as there are 31 footers just offshore. Anyway, let's continue on here to blast through our meteorology segment. Let me press refresh. There we go. There are the surface winds of the eastern world. Let's zoom out one scale. There we go. And here are the jet streams of the east. Here are the jet streams of the central world. Tripled up jet stream over the western North American continent. Here are the surface winds of the west. Surface winds of the central world are looking like this. And jet streams of Europe, Africa, and Asia are looking like this. Continuing on, we're going to show the clouds and fog view, the 3.9 nanometer satellite radiation map. That's part of the infrared spectrum, by the way. That's clouds and fog over the Americas. When it's too dark to use the visible satellite, we recommend using the Interactive Weather Satellite Suite's 3.9 nanometer radiation map. If you want to know if it's going to be cloudy, to view the aurora, this could be very helpful, as it'll show you clouds and fog even when it's dark. They emit radiation because water vapor is a greenhouse gas. So here's our weather.gov map. We'll scroll down briefly to show you the key. If your location's lit, click your location. We've got some cold temperatures, some anomalously cold temperatures coming to the southeast, and some windy days on Lake Michigan, for example. And let's do some forecasts. So here's a forecast for temperature anomaly in degrees Celsius based on the GFS 72-hour model. 72-hour GFS temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius shown here. And it's going to be anomalously warm for St. Patrick's Day in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Here is our pressure and precipitation map. It's based on the same model and time period, the GFS, for 72 hours. So that's the situation from your Smash-O weather station. Next, let's check out new snow based on the Euro model. There's some new snow. Bunch of snow going to hit New Mexico and Mexico. Check it out. Some snow making it deep, deep into central Mexico there. There is the GFS forecast showing similar likelihood there. A bunch of snow coming south of the border. Euro forecast for the next 3 days of new snow. GFS forecast for the next 3 days of snow. And continuing on to our lightning mapper, and there was some serious lightning here from Texas up into Mississippi. Also Arkansas and Louisiana. Here's a real-time lightning map. It looks like we may have some terrestrial strikes here around the Gulf Coast. Hey, Baton Rouge, there's thunder rolling in. Yeah, the map shows you thunder. It's fantastic. Lake Arthur's got some nearby lightning strikes. And also the Burns Wildlife Refuge. Heaviest cells there are just off the coast, south of Lake Charles. So next time you hear lightning, check it out. Of course, you're hearing thunder. You get the idea. Convince the natives that you're Zeus by checking out lightningmaps.org. You can even forecast thunder. Although you probably wouldn't have forecasted that bolt. It's just by itself in the Pacific Ocean. Continuing on to our U.S. Doppler radar map, there are the full 50 states of AUSA, former nation, now Banana Republic, the allegedly United States of America. A bunch of moisture making it all the way from southern Texas all the way up into northeastern Canada. We'll focus on the lower 48 to close this thing out. Here is clouds and fog over the lower 48. And there is the water vapor map. Cloudy and warm is the forecast for the mid-Atlantic states today, at least from what I heard. Here's your recap. Vertical motion of water droplets and ice crystals in the air column. Looks like Dallas might have seen some wintry mix there, or perhaps even some snow in the past couple of hours. Here is clouds and fog. That's 3.9 nanometer infrared radiation. Thanks again for leaving comments, Mike. And there is water vapor. There's a little bit of compression happening there as there's some dry, massive air putting a squeeze in this area right here. So that'll create some huge pressure gradients and some precipitation, maybe even some violent weather when those systems collide. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. And may that solar wind be at your back. Also, don't forget to visit the links over here and so on.